Sailing out of Gravesend, England on the trade route, Captain William Hilton, one August morning in 1663, came upon an island peaceful and serene. A lush green headland off the southeastern corner of what is today the state of South Carolina. And he wrote in his ship's log, "Facing on the sea, the air is clean and sweet. It is the most pines, tall and good. The land the goodliest, best, and fruitfulest isle that ever was seen." Today it is called Hilton Head Island, with its ancient trees and shells and shoreline, and this quiet resting place for the old families that worked the land, marked now only by the hand-cut gravestones hidden under the great moss. The island today has one treasure the good Captain Hilton never saw there: a golf course. The game of golf was brought to its present popularity by the Scots. The first tournament was played in Scotland in 1754. And 32 years later, in 1786, the South Carolina Golf Club in Charleston was the birthplace of America's first golf club. This historic golf club was rechartered and moved here to Sea Pines Plantation in 1968. And the annual Heritage Golf Classic will be held each year to commemorate the South Carolina Golf Club on this Harbour Town course designed by Jack Nicklaus and Pete Dye. The beautiful course was built in only 1 year because of the fine weather, and Jack's sleek blue and white Learjet was a familiar sight on the island airstrip. In between his stops on the Pro Tour, the men would fly to Hilton Head to work on the course. There is a great heritage here. The first South Carolina Golf Club was organized by aristocratic Carolina Coast rice planters. Charleston society had maintained close relationships with England and Scotland from the time of the Carolina colony's founding in 1670. Their sons were sent to England and Scotland to be educated and were exposed to the game of golf in their student days. Now, 185 years later, one of the great players in golf history and a famous golf course architect have designed the perfectly natural and challenging golf course.
Hello, I'm Jack Nicklaus. This is Pete Dye. Pete and I have worked together to design and build the Harbour Town Golf Links here at Sea Pines Plantation. We're here on the eve of the first Heritage Golf Classic to be played over the Thanksgiving weekend. And having a golf tournament on in the first year of operation, it's a dream come true for both of us. And the golf course looks great, doesn't it, Pete?
Looks beautiful, Jack. Really, it's been a lot of fun here, and we have such a great contrast today. The Bermuda grasses with the bahayas, centipedes, pine straw. Brings you back to Pinehurst and some of the old British golf links.
Looks great. Harbour Town is the newest of 3 golf courses here at Sea Pines Plantation.
The setting on this beautiful island that did not receive any new development until 1956, when the Burns Bridge was built, is still a special, unspoiled place to live. Handsome modern homes and villas along the fairways make it ideal for year-round comfort. Single-story modern units set in the beautiful woods are within easy cycling or walking distance of the wide Sea Pines beaches and the fabulous marina. The resort community at South Beach all have splendid views of the ocean and Calabogie Sound. The 18-hole course, playing to a par of 71, is rather short, but the fascination is the marvelous variety. The evening before the Heritage Classic began, Jack Nicklaus and Pete Dye take one last look at 2 of their favorite holes.
This is the 17th. I like this one. This is sort of a seaside hole built out into Calabogie Sound. It's a completely artificial hole built out in the Sound. We've bulkheaded along the left side of the green. You see, we've put telephone poles in the back of the green to give it a background and made a bunker out of it. You've got room to the right to play. You've got a bunker to the right, and you've got a lot of area to the right of the bunker, which is the only safe place on the hole. But it also makes a very, very difficult chip. And of course, the green is very small, and it's quite a delicate shot. But don't you like the way this hole sits out in the Sound, Pete?
Oh, it's beautiful, Jack. And I think it's a real challenge from here. But the members tee there again, they're shooting into the wide part of the green. That'll make it a comfortable shot.
Now let's look at our seaside finishing hole. The 18th hole is completely a golfer against the elements. You never know what the weather's going to be when you get to a seaside hole. And here we've got Calabogie Sound with the marsh coming in on the fairway. Carry straight away over the left side is 230 yards. golfer can go farther right for a shorter carry, and of course the farther right he goes, the longer the shot he has into the green.
When Pete and I were first contacted by Charlie Fraser to do the golf course at Sea Pines Plantation, first thing Pete and I did was to look over the property, and we found that the Sea Pines Plantation was an old cotton field back in the Civil War days. And since that time, there's been a great number of oak, magnolia, pine trees that have grown up all over this property. And of course, so we have many, many 100-year-old trees, big, beautiful trees that we hated to take down. Now, our first thing we'd go about in doing this golf course is cut a center line. We tried to find out where the highs and lows are, and we tried to get our landing areas and our greens on the highs and construct our tees where they really to fit in with the landing areas and the greens. And we cut a center line after we laid the property out, more or less on paper. There's only so many ways you can lay out a golf course when you have a drainage problem, such as you have at Hilton Head. So we cut the center lines and walked the center lines, looking at the trees and looking at the landing areas, measuring 267 yards off the tee to a high, and then how many yards from there to the green would be another high. This is basically how Hilton Head became 6,650 yards. The terrain dictated it, and that's how we like to build our golf courses. We like to build them as natural as possible. The way Mother Nature put the ground there, put the land there, we try to beautify it and add to it rather than try to tear it down, construct it, and reconstruct something that we'd like to see. What is there is far better than what we can build. Once you cut the center lines, then Pete went down the fairways, and I say he cleared the golf course with silk gloves. Pete went down and individually marked every tree. He'd put a certain colored ribbon on the tree for the tree to be taken down, another colored ribbon for the fellow to start to be very careful because there's other trees right next to that he wants to save, and then trees he definitely wanted to save, he put another colored ribbon on. A great number of things happen underground on a golf course, which certainly the average golfer doesn't see, that really goes into the cost of a golf course. Basically, the cost of a watering system, the pipes and the heads are all fairly fixed cost, but it all depends on what you're putting it in. At Hilton Head, you're putting it in sand, and it's not too expensive to put piping in. But in the northern part of the United States, a lot of times you're dealing with rock and clay and other things that make it more difficult, and it does become more costly. Once we had the golf course cleared, or the land cleared, we could see how long each hole would be. And at this time, then we start trying to mix our design to try and really design the golf course from a playability standpoint before we ever started the final grading on building the greens and traps. Like the 9th hole, for instance, there was a road that dictated the tee had to be in front of it, and the clubhouse was in a certain area, so we only had 325 yards to work with. So we had to create something of a bit of variety, especially since the 8th hole was such a long hole to get back to the road where we could cross over to the 9th tee. The 8th hole is a very long par 4, so we go to the 9th hole, which is a very short par 4, so we had to create a very unusual green. We created a U-shaped green with a trap in the middle on the back side, almost making it 2 greens. And I think that we accomplished what we wanted to do there. We found that some holes, such as the 8th, which turned out to be a long hole, we made the green a little larger and gave the player a lot more room on the right where he could play a second shot and play safe away from the water on the left. The first thing that we do when we go to build a golf course is we try to find out what does the client really want in his golf course. Who's going to play it? Charles Fraser at Hilton Head said this is a resort golf course. So the first thing you want to do at a resort golf course is make sure you get people around the course fast. So there's only one thing that really makes a golf course tough, and that's length, especially for an elderly person. But Charles Fraser also said that he'd like to play a tournament on this golf course. We had 2 problems. One, we had to create a golf course that would be fairly easy for the average golfer, yet challenging for the professional. And as I said, the only way to create this is through length and the variation in the tees. Hilton Head from the members' tees is under 6,000 yards. And I think the object of most people when they go on a vacation is they like to go down to a golf course. If they're a 15 handicap at home, they like to shoot 83, 4, 5 at a resort golf course, a couple of 3 shots better than they do at home. And I think this is very important. Vacations are supposed to be enjoyable. If a client wants a more difficult golf course, just for tournament golf, certainly we can build a golf course for that, but I think it would be a mistake not to build a golf course with capabilities so that the average golfer can play it too, because after all, when you're thinking of tournament golf, they only play it 1 week a year. The average golfer plays it 51. Another thing that Pete and I do that we feel is very important today, because it's a thing that golf course architects used to do many years ago, is build greens at ground level and try to create the effect of hitting a downhill shot into them. Most golf courses today have been built by piling up dirt and elevating the greens and the tees, and the golfer out on the fairway is always looking up at a green. I think this is bad because you can't see the green surface, you can't tell where the pin is, and it takes far more land around the green area to make it look natural. If you're building a green at ground level, we don't need as much land around the green because it fits right into the terrain. And what we try to do is take out in front of the green to give the elevated effect and make our landing areas high so the fella has a feeling that he is hitting a downhill shot into a green, more of a target situation rather than hitting up into the air at something. We have one hole at Hilton Head, the fifth hole, which is more or less an island dump. At the fifth hole, we must have buried 30 automobiles, 10 trucks. It was an old asphalt pit. Everything that wasn't wanted on that island was put in that hole, and we buried it, and we felt that even though we had to manufacture a hole there, something that really wasn't natural to what really would have been there, we think we came up with a pretty good hole that balances the golf course out nicely with the other holes. Seaside golf courses, you have a lot of sand, and they're generally fairly easy to drain. We had 18 inches from the high point on the piece of property to the level to which we could drain the property. As a result, we had to build a lot of lakes, a lot of canals to take the water off. And this is not the easiest thing to do because you don't want water in play for a resort golf course for all the people to come there and lose their balls every hole. You've got to take some water out of play, but then you certainly do use water in a lot of strategic places. And we tried to use most of the water around the par 3 holes, simply because an iron shot is certainly far more accurate for the average golfer than a wood shot. So we tried to use very little water in the driving areas because of this. I worked for over a year trying to build this golf course, put it into play to where I thought that it was challenging to the average golfer and going to be a good resort golf course. Come the week of the tournament, I had to put on another hat. I had to go out there and become the mouse, running at my own mouse trap, and, well, I found a lot of things out there that were difficult for me. I was successful in being able to trap myself. In particular, I found that our own little 18th hole, which, of course, after we play in the trees and out into the open into Calabogie Sound, I found the 18th to be a mouse trap for me. The beach off to the left of the green doesn't look difficult. It looks like it'd be just another sand trap. But you'd be surprised what that tide will wash in there. I found that I missed my second shot. I pulled it to the left of the green. It really didn't worry me as I was walking up there. I thought I'd just have another sand shot, but I didn't. I had a shot that I could hardly play. And as a result, I ended up making a double bogey 6. I didn't have enough respect for my own hole. And I think that this is what makes a golf course great. You've got to have respect for each hole that's there. Each shot has to be played with thought, and you cannot be careless. Another great thing about Hilton Head, you really don't realize how the weather changes the golf course. You play through most of the first 15 holes and you're in the trees, and whether the wind is blowing southeast or northwest or northeast or southwest, it isn't a great effect on the golf ball until you get out in the open at 16, 17, and 18, and all of a sudden you realize you are playing in weather. This is what really made me feel great, that we've created everything that you can create in a golf course. Playing through the trees, playing over water, playing in the open, playing on the ocean. And this is what Hilton Head has, everything.
Jack Nicklaus finished the third round of the first Heritage Classic up among the leaders at 214. Jack's friendly rival Arnold Palmer held the lead at 209 going into the final round as the fine crowd at this first tournament relaxed around the marina, which is only a short walk from the clubhouse. Sea Pines offers superb living in an oceanside community that features golf, tennis, sailing, and fishing. This round, all-stone marina is a snug, safe harbor off the Sound, offering any mariner every convenience. In the brilliant, warm, late November sunlight, the crowds gathered about the new clubhouse as Sunday's final round began. Jack was teamed with Dan Sykes, here teeing off on the par 4, 380-yard first hole. Jack Nicklaus followed with a perfect wood down the chute of trees. Arnold Palmer and Richard Crawford were next to tee off. Crawford was tied with Homero Blancas for second position, with Jack, Tom Weiskopf, and Bert Yancey right behind.
There's a psychological advantage from tournament play, and I think from the average golfer's play, to start out with a fairly easy starting hole. Our easiest par 5 is our second hole. He'll be able to start out quite often 4-4. This gives him a psychological advantage and gives him a build-up for the golf course. The third hole gets just a little bit tougher. The fourth hole is just an average par 3 as far as difficulty. And then we come into a fairly long par 5. Now we sort of change pace a little bit. Then we play a good par 4, not extremely long, but relatively tight. The seventh hole, I think, is a very unique par 3. It is an island green surrounded by sand. Several trees are in the traps. There's a big tree on the trap on the right and 2 big trees on the trap on the left. Most of the fellows will be using a 5 or 6 iron on this hole, and it favors a left to right shot into the green. Now there it is. I'm sure you've never seen anything quite like that before.
There's Dick Crawford playing out of the all-encompassing bunker around 7. And then Arnold Palmer lines up his putt on what is actually one of the largest greens on the course. But even this is smaller than most on the circuit. In fact, one of the newspaper writers, in describing the course before the tournament began, was kidding about the Spanish moss hanging there like an eerie snare, and greens about the size of a contact lens. Arnold held his par, and in this classic, very few golfers birdied the 7th in the 4 days of competition.
The 8th hole, which is probably our most difficult par 4 on the golf course, followed by the 9th, which is a fairly short par 4. So if a fellow has played the 8th well, he has a good shot at birdie at 9, it gives him a good mental build-up. But if he has trouble at 8, he still feels that the 9th is not too difficult, that he might be able to get it back. So there's a lot of psychological factors in building a golf course. After you've had an easy 4 at 9, now we go right back out with a fairly difficult par 4 at 10. See, we've gone hard 4, easy 4, tough 4 at 10.
Arnold Palmer, although he began this final round with a 3-stroke lead, was having a most difficult time. He 3-putted the 8th, was in the water on 10, but came back strong here to maintain his par, and this putt was one of the turning points for Arnold in the round. The gallery loved it.
11 is a nice 4. It's not extremely difficult, yet it's not an extremely easy hole. Then 12 is a little bit easier than 11. And then 13 is even easier yet. 13 is a very short 4. And then we come up with not a very difficult 3. Now what we've built up to, we've come from harder holes down to easier holes, to where we build up to the 15th hole.
Here Tom Weiskopf in red takes his long putt on 13 and is just short. Blancas holds out in the rich shade on a green that is edged with cedar planking, like some of the greens in Scotland. Here Arnold takes his approach to the 13th. There you see the huge bunker pitched deep and right up against the edge of the putting surface. These boards on the banks keep your ball from burying in the very deep traps. Arnold made his all-important birdie putt, and the crowd really came to life. The short 14th, a 152-yard par 3, proved the final undoing for Bert Yancey, Jack, and Homero Blancas. Here Yancey hits a fine iron beautifully to the green, which is surrounded by water in the front and to the right. The setting on these 2 holes with the artful footbridges over the canals and the patterns of sun and shadow is memorable indeed, almost making a golfer forget his troubles. Jack 2-putted the 14th green, and when Homero Blancas teed off, he dropped his ball short into the water. Here Arnold Palmer measures his first long putt. And most of the fans got to thinking that in years to come, the 14th might unravel many a player, despite the tranquility. Jack Nicklaus and Pete Dye were probably setting everyone up for the elegant par 5, 562-yard 15th, the most challenging hole at Harbour Town. No professional in the world can reach the green in 2. Only here, after his second shot, does Arnold get a look at the beautiful 15th green, which is tucked behind a grove of trees with a lagoon to the left and two bunkers in front of it. Arnold, playing with great care, three-putted this 15th green, the third time in the afternoon. This one wasn't coming easy. With two sailboats on the horizon, Jack Nicklaus holed out on 18, finishing with a four-day total of 289. This is the fantastic 17th at Hilton Head, the view of the tee as the gallery saw it from the far edge of the green. Omar Blanca's two-iron was a picture shot. And Tom Weiskopf was left with a long putt. But long or short, the putts for the contenders weren't dropping in. When Arnold Palmer and Dick Crawford arrived at this par 3 188-yard seaside snare, where water skirts two-thirds of the hole, they were just one stroke apart, but the 17th separated them. Dick put his tee shot in the sand pit on the left, and then hitting too close to the ball, sent it too strong far across the green. Arnold was in the wire on the right, and he pitched out in fine style, leaving himself a six-footer. The crowd, drawn against the water and sky like an old golf print, was perfectly silent as Crawford came back to miss, bogey, and lose his chance to catch Arnold. But that same crowd exploded as Arnold holed out for a par. As Jack Nicklaus and Pete Dye figured, the 17th and 18th would prove the real test even in perfect weather. Just think what it would be when the weather is mean and blustering, like it is at St. Andrews.
Take the 18th hole, for example. If a front had just passed through, you'd have a northwest wind, which is right in your face on the 18th hole. The 18th hole could become two wood shots very easily for a good golfer. Whereas the golf hole was designed, though, to play under the prevailing southeast breeze. Under the southeast breeze, the 18th hole wouldn't be any more than a 3-wood off the tee to stay in the tongue on the left side of the fairway, and maybe a 7 or an 8 iron to the green. And it's just like night and day out in the open on a sound.
The moment now is memorable as any at Pebble Beach or Pinehurst or St. Andrews. Arnold Palmer going for an almost impossible birdie putt on 18. Oh, how close can you come? But no matter, Arnold has it with his par and a victory at Hilton Head. Now the inaugural Heritage Golf Classic was a beautiful reality. Arnold had won with a final score of 283. Dick Crawford and Bert Yancey finished in a tie for second with 286. Omar Blancas had a 288 and Jack Nicklaus 289. In years to come, the setting here for the first Heritage Classic would be remembered, and golfers on the tour would be talking about the course that Jack built. Charles Frazier awarded the trophy for the first time to Arnold Palmer, as Jack Nicklaus and Pete Dye proudly looked on.
I should thank my wife for giving me the encouragement to win, and I think that probably the next thing I should do is thank my good friend and competitor, Jack Nicklaus, for building a golf course that I could win again on.
Well, I'll remember the first Heritage Golf Classic because we were blessed with good weather, beautiful days, a golf course that we felt that was challenging, and something that will get better year after year. The more it's played, and the more that Sea Pines Plantation continues to develop the Harbour Town area.